this congregation is held for the purpose of conferring honorary degrees.
Mr. Chancellor, I do not suppose that many of us, shopping with an 8-year-old son, have been required to sit in a particular part of a shoe shop because of the color of our skin. Nor do I imagine that our wives have often had to explain to distraught children that Daddy went to jail to help other people. Never before has this university, or its parent university at Durham, honored an American Negro, and it is all the more fitting, therefore, that we should meet today to recognize the creative achievement of one whose contribution to furthering the brotherhood and dignity of man are amongst the most significant in the modern world. So, Mr. Chancellor, I ask you now, both as a symbolic gesture and as the highest mark of distinction this university can afford, to confer upon Martin Luther King, Christian pastor and social revolutionary, the degree of Doctor of Civil Law, honoris causa.
By the authority of this university, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Civil Law, honoris causa.
Mr. Chancellor, Mr. Vice Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, I need not pause to say how very delighted I am to be here today and to have the privilege of sharing with you in this significant experience. Words are certainly inadequate for me to express my deep and genuine appreciation to the University of Newcastle for honoring me today in such a significant way. And I can assure you that your honoring me today in this very meaningful way is of inestimable value for the continuance of my humble efforts. And although I cannot in any way say that I am worthy of such a great honor, I can also assure you that you give me renewed courage and vigor to carry on in the struggle to make peace and justice a reality for all men and women all over the world. In honoring me today, you not only honor me, but you honor the hundreds and thousands of people with whom I have worked and with whom I have been associated in the struggle for racial justice. And so I say thanks not only for myself, but I also thank you for them. And I can assure you that this day will remain dear to me as long as the cords of memory shall lengthen. There are three urgent and indeed great problems that we face not only in the United States of America but all over the world today. That is the problem of racism, the problem of poverty, and the problem of war. And the things that I have been trying to do in our struggle at home and in the struggle that is taking place all over the world has been to deal forthrightly and in depth with these great and grave problems that pervade our world. As you well know, racism is a reality in many sections of our world today. Racism is still the colored man's burden and the white man's shame. And the world will never rise to its full moral or political or even social maturity until racism is totally eradicated. And racism is exactly what it says. It is a myth of the inferior race. It is a notion that a particular race is worthless and degraded innately. And the tragedy of racism is that it is based not on an empirical generalization, but on an ontological affirmation. It is the idea that the very being of a people is inferior. Well, it may be true that morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. It may be true that the law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. It may be true that the law can't make a man love me, but it can restrain him from lynching me. And I think that is pretty important also. And so while the law may not change the hearts of men, it does change the habits of men if it's vigorously enforced. And through changes in habits, pretty soon attitudinal changes will take place, and even the heart may be changed in the process. And so that is a challenge, and a great one, for all men of goodwill to work passionately and unrelentingly to get rid of racial injustice, whether it exists in the United States of America, whether it exists in England, or whether it exists in South Africa. Wherever it is alive, it must be defeated. And somewhere along the way, in this sometimes sick and often terribly schizophrenic world, we've got to come to see that the destiny of white and colored persons is tied together. In a real sense, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. And finally, there can be no separate black path to power and fulfillment that does not intersect white roots, and there can be no separate white path to power and fulfillment short of social disaster that does not recognize the necessity of sharing that power with colored aspirations for freedom and human dignity. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation and all of the nations of the world into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood, and speed up the day when all over the world justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Thank you.